Good morning. This is Rich Sierra, president of Florida Small Business Legal Center. This is episode 52 of Business SOS. Thank you for listening. This is actually our 1-year anniversary when I began this journey of creating a podcast for business owners based on my book, Business SOS, 8 Common Legal Mistakes Business Owners Make and How to Avoid Them. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can ask for it in your local bookstores. So I've gone through a lot of topics, and some of you have obviously. I appreciate those who have started with me from the very beginning and have actually gone through all the 51 episodes that I've had in the last year. But some of you have actually discovered the podcast later on. So what I thought I'd do today, I'd talk about some of the topics that I have covered in the past, say something about them, and basically remind you of those. But in the case that you're interested in going back to those episodes, but also talk about some of the guests that we had last year, and also tell you more about what I plan to do for season 2 of Business SOS, which begins next week. So I'm very excited about that. So as I always begin the show, if you want to participate, you want to send me any questions that you may have, please send them to me at richsierra.com. And if I select your question, legal question, I'll send you a free copy of my book, Business SOS, 8 Common Legal Mistakes Business Owners Make and How to Avoid Them, as I mentioned earlier today. So please participate. As it is for you, this is your show. And so I began in April, actually March of last year, I began this journey. And in terms of preparing for the podcast, and it was, I'll be honest with you, it was a little unnerving the first time that I did this, in terms of listening to myself, being out of my comfort zone and being able to speak at the video and also the audio. So as things progressed, it actually became easier. So I'm really proud of myself for at least getting myself out of the comfort zone and starting this podcast. And why I chose to do the podcast is important to know that. And this is for you. In my practice, this will be, in October, will be my 20th year practicing law. And I've spoken to thousands of business owners in my practice. And in fact, in the last, there's a software that actually finds out how many lawsuits have you represented since you began? And I'm close to like 1,200 lawsuits that I've actually been involved with. So in the last 20 years, so not everybody that I talk to gets involved in a lawsuit. So there's a lot of history, a lot of experience that I have, and I thought that I'll share it with you because I see that many business owners commit the same mistakes. They make the same mistakes over and over. And I can only reach so many people as I talk to people every week. So this is a vehicle that if you're listening to me, you're a business owner, and maybe I'll share with you something about contracts, something about leases, something about a lawsuit, and it gives you that pause to avoid doing the work yourself and contacting an attorney. I've done what I really intended to do, is to give you that yellow light, as I call it, the yellow light, to say, okay, let me stop here as opposed to answering a lawsuit for myself. Let me at least call an attorney as opposed to downloading a contract from the web and kind of like tinkering with it, even though I know what I'm doing. And because I want to avoid a few $100s and use that for a purchase or a sale of a business, or to use it as your standard contract for vendors that you will be using over and over again. And I will tell you that many of the lawsuits that I get involved with involve contract litigation and partnership disputes. And when I look at those contracts, I ask the question, who prepared the contract? 9 out of 10 times is the business owner who prepared it, or they have somebody who helped them out that may have some legal background, may not be in this type of practice area. And I find a lot of defects in the contract, which makes it difficult to enforce. And so it is, my premise of this podcast, premise of this book, don't do legal work by yourself. That is really my best advice I can give you. When in doubt, call an attorney, especially a business attorney if you're dealing with a business-related matter. So in terms of some of the highlights that I had last year, and I will tell you that one of the joys that I had, I brought my son and my soon-to-be daughter-in-law, Mike Sierra and Caroline Castillo, and we talked about They're very successful business owners on their own right. They have a company called Flypath Golf, and they also do email for performance as well. And we talk about partnerships and what makes successful partnerships work. And so they share their thoughts with us. And also we had a second episode talking about email marketing. They're experts in digital marketing, and we talk about their products. So that for me gave me a great joy to have them in the show. And we had a really interesting conversation. And to me, it was one of the longest conversations that three of us had. And I'm glad that is preserved in video. So I'm really, really proud of that moment. Another highlight that I had, and we had guest and author Kate Delaney. She's a very, very famous sportscaster. She has her own show, the Kate Delaney Radio Show, and she has over every single night, and it's syndicated. And she has over 3 million listeners every night. So we had a great interview, and we talked about her book, Deal Your Own Destiny, and I read it twice, and I highly recommend that book. So that was to me, a very proud moment to bring her into the show, and I'm very proud that she agreed to be part of the show. And I one time actually interviewed. I was a part of her show as well. And that was episode 29 of Business SOS. I also had my friend and bankruptcy attorney, Jeffrey Tromberg. And that was in November of last year, episode 27. And we talked about personal bankruptcy and the business owners sometimes get in situations for a lot of different reasons that they might have to look at that as an option. And we had a discussion on that. And he provided great information that is also helpful to business owners. And in many occasions, people ask me, hey, listen, should I go bankrupt? Should I go ahead and, what should I do? I refer him to Jeff. Well, I say, listen to the podcast and I'll give you some information. So that's not my practice area, but it's something that I think is important to know. We also had a musical guest. I had the first time in Potpopoli, which is the studio that we record the show a week before actually it airs. For the first time, we actually had professional musicians with us, recording artists. We had Kristen Long and Will Fink, and they actually performed with us 2 songs, one release song, and she also has an album that is coming out. I believe it got released. So I believe for next season, I'm going to bring them back, and now Potpopoli has the Pot, an actual studio that really looks like a TV studio. So I think I'm going to bring them back in to do a follow-up interview with them about the challenges that musicians and performing artists go through in their journey, and also from a contract perspective and business perspective in the business of music. So I'm going to bring them back. And just to an aside, I've been watching this week the Bon Jovi documentary, Thank You, Good Night. If you have not watched it, I highly recommend it. It's really a lesson, and I've only finished 2 of the 4 episodes. But what I love about it is that it is about drive, it's about leadership, it's about business, it's about commitment, it's about music, it's about their journey. And each and every one of you has a journey in your business. Every one of you, I can interview business owners. I plan to bring some clients into my show as well to talk about their journey. How did they begin? The challenges that they faced, what challenges they had to overcome, what breaks they had in their career that turned it over, that was a turning point that makes them from where they were to where they are now, what they learned. So we can all learn from that. So that documentary just gave me so many lessons, and I plan to probably watch it again because it really I drew a lot from that, and people don't see what goes on behind the scenes in any of our jobs. Sometimes we make it look too easy. But the reality is a lot goes along in terms of preparation and challenges, and in your business as well. When you deliver your product, people don't realize the preparation, everything you have to do in order to deliver the product service that you actually deliver for your customers, and the challenges that you have to overcome. So I highly recommend it. I'm not paid for the advertising. It's something that's really more it's something that I want to share with you, that if you're a business owner, whether you enjoy his music or not, or love his music, watch it because you'll learn a great deal from it as well. I think it's available on Hulu right now. You can just stream it that way. So some of the other topics, of course, I got to mention two of my other guests as well before I forget, because if I don't, I'll be in trouble. They're my good friends, dear friends, Deidre Nero. She's an immigration attorney. She spoke about the immigration, the I-9 forms and the requirements for employers to comply with immigration documents for their employee in terms of the verification process, and also how she can help business owners bring employees from out of the country. And also, I spoke with my friend Angela Neve and about the impact on divorce on a business. And that is, sometimes you have a situation that there's a divorce, sometimes there's a small business that the husband and wife owns or the partners own. So usually the business ends up in the midst of the litigation, and the business gets sued individually, separately. So then a business attorney has to step in to represent the business. So we talked about that in episode number 5. That was back in June of last year, June 27th. That's when it aired. So this is some of the guests that I brought in, and I truly appreciate their help, their assistance, and their time for being part of the show. And some of the mistakes that I talked to last year, which I want to touch upon in this episode as well. The mistakes in contracting. I spoke about that in an episode, and I think actually I repeat the topic throughout the podcast simply because it's happened so often that I want to make sure that I don't just do it once a year. And I talk about various mistakes. And one of the mistakes that I see happening frequently, almost every single week, and I probably have to, have maybe a business tip of the week as a segment, is that people just don't, they download those documents from the web and just come up and create mix and match of various provisions because they look good, and then go ahead and use that contract for their business. But also when they do contracting with another person, another entity, sometimes they don't even get the signed contract. It sounds intuitive that you want to get a contract signed, you want to get your copy, but in the old days when you had ink, you have basically signed your document. For the most part, you get a copy of it. Now everything is electronic, so you get an email through DocuSign, and then you sign it, but you forget to download it. And then that link eventually expires. So what happens is then you want to enforce a contract, or it's the person breached the contract, and you say, I ask you, can I have a copy of the contract? I get a draft in Word. And I'm like, well, what is this? Where's the signed contract? Well, I don't have it. So what do you mean you don't have it? Well, the contract basically was in DocuSign, the link expired. And then the individual that you're trying to sue is not around. The person left with the money. So that makes it difficult for me to try to enforce a contract that has not signed. Again, it's a very simple, avoidable mistakes, but it happens all the time that I want to make you aware of it. I talked, of course, one additional guest, which I be remiss if I did not mention him, and that's a very special event that I had, which I had a podcast that I recorded in Vegas, and I had my friend Glenn Potter, the training manager at the Westgate Resorts in Las Vegas, who we talked about the importance of training employees to increase profits. And in fact, that's in my YouTube channel. It's one of the most popular videos now that is being watched. And he really gives us insight of his 30-year career in the casino industry, in the casino hospitality industry, as he was training manager for Park MGM. He was, a training manager, director for various casinos in Las Vegas. So you talk about hospitality, you talk about being in the business of service and how good training increases profitability. This video and the podcast is something to listen to. And I certainly appreciate my friend Glenn Potter for his time in in giving me that interview, because really that helped us a great deal, and it teach me as well. So I learned a great deal from my guest. Uh, so a lot of the topics that I talk about, they're in two branches. They're going to the contract, or what it's called transactional part, or they go into the litigation aspect, because that's basically the core of my practice. My practice is anything that a business owner would need from a legal perspective. And if there's something area specialized, I'll send it out. But for the most part, that big circle includes, transactional work, which is basically lease agreements, for the most part, franchising, contracting with employees, independent contractor agreements, vendor agreements, non-disclosure agreements. Used to be, until recently, non-competition agreements. Since they're banned by the FTC, they will be banned in the next few months, most of them. And I think in the last podcast, I spoke about that. So I'm not going to go over that topic. It's basically last week's topic. But so that's the transactional and the review documents, buy-sell agreements. That's what I call a transactional track of my practice. The second track is the litigation track, which basically deals with defending business owners who get sued, sometimes representing business owners who are sued. And obviously, I'm giving you more of a brief or a general overview in what type of practice, what type of lawsuits we get involved with and that I've spoken about. A good number of them are partnership disputes. It's a business divorce. So that is something, that we get involved in significant number of partnership disputes. Why partnerships end up in lawsuit? In my experience, it has been lack of communication, lack of vision, and also lack of contracts. In many cases, when there's a partnership dispute that I represent one of the parties, which I can only represent one of the parties anyway, when I ask, is there a contract that you two signed? No, we don't have one. So that defaults to the statute, depending whether it's a corporation or an LLC. So in my experience, they end up in litigation either when the business is doing very well, when there's a lot of money on the table, or when the business is not doing well at all. It's just, for some reason, that's my opinion, that's been my experience, that's usually when they end up in litigation. But in terms of common themes of the frequency of the patterns that I see is that, when partners have a different vision, or when partners do not respect each other's boundaries, in terms of what each other has levels of authority, or when one partner takes the money from the bank account without telling the other partner, or overutilizes the credit card from the business and begins to take vacations, personal expenses, that's when things begin to go south with a business partnership. There's no mechanism in place for dispute resolution, which I always, recommend mediation as the first step, if at all possible. And it's basically more of a handshake agreement, and it's not a good idea. And I've spoken extensively about partnership agreements in my podcast, and I'm probably going to bring that up again with more detail, and maybe bring another colleague to. We can discuss this topic as well, and I plan to do that. But so we deal with partnership agreements, and partnership disputes and lawsuits, and it's like a business divorce. It can get very messy. Try to get them resolved as soon as possible. Let's talk about this. Let's get to a mediation conference. You was going to go separate ways. Let's get it done fast. It will not get cheaper as you go along. It will not get better as you go along, because accusations fly left and right. There's animosity. There's emotions that come into play. So we try to get it resolved as soon as possible. Another area that I get involved with respect to litigation and is buy-sell agreements. When a business sale does not work out, when a business sale, when the buyer of a business has the perception, has the belief that the seller somehow misrepresented the numbers, misrepresented the value of the business, misrepresented what the business was supposed to do, when perhaps some of the financial documents, according to the buyer, were not accurate, were not representative of what the business actually, was doing at the time. So I defend some of the clients that get sued for partners for buy-sell agreements that don't go well. When the buyer feels that has been defrauded, usually there's always a fraud claim in these cases. Doesn't mean that it's a valid one, but there's always a fraud claim within the lawsuit. And I represent sellers that, for some reason, that they provide a promissory note for the most part they finance part of the sale to the buyer, and then the buyer does not pay the promissory note because he or she feels that the seller misrepresented the value of the business. And in one of the episodes I remember that I spoke, I talked about the due diligence checklist. And in fact, I made that available to anybody who was listening at the time. And somebody took me up on that offer. I think 2 people took me up on that offer, that if you're interested in my due diligence checklist, I'll make it available to you. You're listening today, you want a copy, you send me an email. Simply because I want, if you're buying a business, you should basically ask all the questions you need to ask in terms of that business. And what happens is that they don't ask enough questions. They don't know what questions to ask, so you do not know what you do not know, so you're not going to know what to ask. So a checklist will give you some guidance, will give you something to begin to work with. You still, if you're buying a business or selling a business, I still believe you should have legal representation that has experience in doing this. Don't go at it alone, and I'm going to save a few $100s, a few $1,000s. I don't want to pay, an attorney. That is your prerogative. Okay. The majority of the cases that I get involved with representing buyers or sellers in litigation involve parties that were unrepresented at the time. That's the fact. Most of the time I'm like looking at documents like, who prepared the document? We did it. Or there's one party not represented. It's usually the one that comes to my office to tell me something went wrong with this transaction. That's the fact, as part of my experience. So, if you're going to be doing something that, especially that intricate, that specialized, that you're going to be either receiving money for a business, an asset, get an attorney to help you. It's money well spent. If you're a buyer, that you're going to spend a few $100,000 in a business and you do not know how to do proper due diligence. You do not know what questions to ask. Okay. Getting an attorney will help you make sure that everything goes well. Because once you sign that document, once you purchase that business, it's difficult to undo or return the business once you purchase it. It's just not going to happen. So that's basically my advice is something like that important. Get an attorney to help you out. I also gave you, in episode 44, I gave you something that you can do yourself. And in fact, it's one of the few instances which I say, this you can do yourself. This is not something that you need me for. But if you need an attorney, obviously we can help you. But for the most part, in this particular episode, I said, okay, I'm going to give you something you can do yourself. And that's small claims. And the episode is episode 44. I think it released in March 20th or March 26th, I think it was. And how do I file a small claims lawsuit in Florida? So in this episode, I used the Palm Beach County website as an example because they have a really great self-help section. But in Florida, pretty much every county that, depending which you're going to file the lawsuit or where the defendant is located at, whether it's Miami-Dade, Broward, or Palm Beach, which are the counties that I have most practice, and I have a case in Orlando and Naples as well. Every clerk of the court has a section for small claims, for self-help, and they have forms that you can download, utilize them. So in Florida, any controversy, any amount less than $8,000 qualifies under small claims. So that's something you do not need an attorney. If the amount is over $10,000 to $8,000 and you decide, you know what, I'm going to go $8,000 and just go to small claims, you can do that as well. But in this forms are self-explanatory. If you run a business, you can do the forms. They're self-explanatory to give you instructions what to do. They tell you who to send information to a process server, and how the preliminary hearing works, pretrial conference, the mediation. Everything is there, and that's something you can do yourself. You do not need an attorney, even if you have a company. And I want to make this point. It's happening frequently as well. If you own a company, LLC or corporation, any legal entity, in order to defend or file a lawsuit, anything above small claims, you need an attorney. That is state law. I've seen frequently in the last 3 months, like 5 or 6 clients, which opted to defend the lawsuit or file a lawsuit on their own. And those pleadings were stricken by the court. And in fact, in some cases, you can be sanctioned for doing that, even though they felt, okay, I didn't know I wanted to do it. So I want to make it clear, other than the small claims, okay, you need an attorney to represent you in court. You cannot represent yourself. That is state law. So I want to make that point clear, because sometimes people download things from the web, they go ahead and sign them, send them out, and then it becomes more of a problem. I spoke about mediation conference a great deal, and I'm a big proponent of mediation. That's episode 41. And why mediation is actually a good step to resolve business disputes. And the way I like it is basically confidentiality, client control. You have creativity, and what I like about mediation is to create a process. You start with a white canvas, and you can be very creative in how to develop a solution for a business problem. And it's confidential, and it's also cost effective. That you can save a great deal of money by trying to resolve the dispute right there and then with a mediator, versus spending tens of thousands of dollars in litigation. What I love about mediation is that you, as the client, you're in control. You decide whether this gets settled or does not get settled. You decide in what terms. You and obviously the opposing side. But by you spending the time, the 4 hours that usually takes a mediation conference, and thinking about a solution with the assistance of a professional, your mindset shifts to solving the problem versus litigating. And that's why I believe mediation is a good vehicle to solve business disputes. In fact, should be the first one that business owners should consider before filing a lawsuit. And I usually recommend that to our clients if it is possible. If it is not, sometimes you're in the middle of a lawsuit, but let's try to see if we can talk about this and get it resolved. If the legal process, especially in litigation, business litigation, is 80% is procedure. You don't have a lot of control. The attorneys have control, the judge has control, and we spend most of our time filing motions, defending motions, going to motion calendar hearings, which are 5-minute hearings with the court, which requires, an hour or two just to schedule it for all the different things that we have to do behind the scenes just to be able to be in front of a court. But you're not in control. And that, to a degree, is frustrating to you as the client, because you say, I don't know what's happening with my case. Obviously there's a lot of information that goes along the way, but in terms of the process or what motions that we have to file, that's really more inside baseball that the lawyers kind of know, and you don't have control over it. But in a mediation conference, you do have control. So that's why I spoke about this in great time, and I think I spoke about it twice. A couple of highlights. I spoke also about don't fall for trucking automation scams. And there's online scams that for whatever reason during last year, they were all over the place. It's still around, but people are catching on not to fall for them. And I talked about, what to recognize. And it's actually one of my most popular videos as well in terms of people say, I was going to consider something like that. Thanks for the video. I got an email on that. So, recognizing online scams is very important because people mean well. They want to invest the money to get some return. That's understandable. But, unfortunately, it's very easy to fall for scams. And some people have become victims of scams at the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. People have borrowed money from high interest loans. People have put money in houses, taking second mortgages to invest in these businesses. And then the people go away. And the problem that we have is that the legal process, the civil legal process is slow, very slow, compared to the ability of people to steal your money if they do it in a crafty way. And unfortunately, this has happened. So I talk about that episode, and I hope people look at that and say, you know what, let me make sure I get the proper advice before I actually go into this. And in most cases, in fact, all the cases, the clients that I represent suing these companies, when asked the question, who helped you review this contract? Did anyone help you at all, give you advice about the viability of this business opportunity? And the answer was no, nobody. So it is so much we can do if people don't come to us for help. But we don't judge. Our objective is to help, and we try to help as best as we can our clients. And getting assistance for professionals will be very helpful. One more guest that I actually had a lot of guests here that I did not realize. I brought my branding photographer, Graciela Laurent. That was episode 23 back in October of last year. Not only she does branding photography, but she also does boudoir photography. And we talked about that. In fact, she's the photographer who did the cover of my book, Business SOS. So truly, it was great. We talked about the photo session that we had. We talked about the process of branding, of personal branding, how important that is. And so I brought her in as a guest, and that was very exciting to bring her in. And she's a very smart and very savvy businesswoman and very successful, but also she talked about the challenges that she faced, what she began and what she did to prepare herself, and how she got mentors and how she read every business book she can get her hands into. So the process of business ownership is difficult, but there are cues and we can act loose, and also we can learn from each other. So, Gracia, thank you, Graciela, for being part of the show. I want to make sure I do not miss anyone, so give me 1 second to make sure to go through my list, because otherwise I'll hear about it. I think I was able to cover everybody here that was part of the show. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. But if I didn't, I certainly apologize to anybody that I missed, but I don't think I missed anyone. Somebody that was here with me in the show, not as a guest, but certainly as a live participant, as a live studio audience, was my beautiful wife, Sharon, who during the summers, she works at a school. So she came with me and listened to my shows as a live studio audience and critiqued me and gave me support. And certainly appreciated her for being here, especially during those first episodes. I was nervous about doing this, and she still comes and listens to my show. But thank you, baby. Thank you for all your support. Love you. And this is very exciting to me. And this is the end of episode number 52 of Business SOS. Thank you for listening. Whether you're listening in your car, listening at home, at your office, at the gym. And in fact, my friend Steve told me that I'm the podcast rotation while he walks his dog. So thank you, Steve, for listening. And it was great to see you a few weeks ago. So as I close the show, if you want to reach me, you can reach me at richsierra.com. If you want to learn more about our legal services, my website is floridasmallbusinesslegalcenter.com. We're on Facebook at FSB Legal. We're on YouTube. If you like want to watch the video of this podcast, We're on youtube.com/@RichardSierra. We're at X at Rich_Sierra. We're on Instagram at FSB Legal. If you want to give us a call, the number is 866-842-5202. Remember the Business SOS, 8 Common Legal Mistakes business owners make and how to avoid them. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can ask for your local bookstores. If you like the podcast, I appreciate it if you follow us and you subscribe. And also give us a 5-star review. Same thing with the YouTube channel as well. And until next week, this is Rich Sierra. Remember that my goal is to help you succeed.